Hey guys, thanks for watching Precision Rifle Network. I'm Joel. Today, a little bit more detail on my arm board and how I write down data, and we're going to work on some holdovers. All right, so after my video that came out last week on my arm board, which was super quick and simple, just kind of telling how I write down on my arm board, what it's used for, and how you kind of organize on your arm board your data and all that kind of stuff. I had a few questions that I kind of just wanted to do a follow-up video on. So people wanted to see a couple of things, and that was plan out a stage and then show exactly how you go about writing down a stage's worth of data on your arm board. And then also I'm going to kind of cover a quick and simple way that I do holdover stages. And this is the kind of holdover stage where you're allowed to dial something at the start and then you just have to hold over and not touch your scope after that. So let's get started. All right guys, so you'll recognize my arm board from last week. And let's say that our stage is 2 shots at 200, 2 shots at 300, 2 shots at 4, and 2 shots at 5 for a total of 8 rounds. That's our stage. I know that's super simple, and a lot of times match directors will be like, oh, it's 237 yards and it's 410 yards. It's not perfectly rounded off numbers most times, but for the sake of this video, we'll just make it easy. So my dope at 200 yards for the 6 Creedmoor is 0.3. All right, so I might write 200, 300, 400, and 500 on my arm board. Again, starting close, going out to far distance, and then I'll put my drop data for each of those. Even though this is going to be a holdover stage, I'm still going to put what I need because I may end up forgetting and having to look at it and those sorts of things. So we've got a 0.3. Okay, so now those are my drop data. So now what I will do, and I'm kind of cheating here a little bit because I've already figured out my wind and I know what it is down there. And so if I didn't and I had a wind guesstimate, so let's just say that I thought my wind was 5 miles an hour and it was coming from the 5:30 o'clock position, which would be kind of back behind me to my right. What I would do is I would punch all that into my Kestrel. I'd get my wind correction, which for all of these distances, you know, for my 200 and 300, I'm going to hold center, so I wouldn't put anything. For my 400, I would put a 0.2, and then for here would be 0.2 as well. All right. So that's kind of what I do to give myself a reminder. Obviously the wind was coming from the 5:30 position, but this is just how I remember the general direction of the wind, and I end up holding off, you know, like into the wind for my target. So that's how I do that. So now, when it comes to running this stage in holdover fashion, I'm going to dial on my 0.3 so that at my 200 yard target I can just hold center, right? And at 300, that's 0.9, so really I'm not going to try to figure out where 0.9 is because I've got 2/10 hash marks. Some people have, you know, 5/10 hash marks, and it's really not desirable to be holding out in thin air. So, you know, what's a tenth at 300 yards? You know what I mean? It's not enough to worry about, so I'm actually going to hold 1 there. And then this happens to line up with a hash mark, 1.6, so I'm going to just add, you know, 3 hash marks above what I did at 300 for my 400 yard, and then I'm going to find the 2.4 at my 500. And I won't dial, and it should save me some time. So that's how I go about that. Let me go ahead and run this stage for you guys, and we'll see if we get our impacts. I'm going to go ahead and set my timer for 90 seconds. We'll see where we're at after we finish. So I'm going to hit the button, I'm going to grab the mag, insert it. It'll kind of simulate starting with mag in, bolt back, that sort of thing. It's not really about the time it takes. It's just showing you what I do for holdovers. Let's see if I get my impacts. So here we go.
Miss.
All right, guys, so the point of that is really just to show people an answer to their questions from last week's video on the arm board. How do I actually take a stage, write it out? How do I do that? And somewhere along the line, holdovers came into play, and so I kind of explained how a very simple way of how to dial in for holdovers. Now they lined up perfectly this time. They don't always do that. Sometimes they're off a little bit here and there. Match directors like to make it interesting. And there's also a way, if you kind of just play around with your numbers, guys, and this I guess is maybe your pro tip for today, especially on holdovers, look at your numbers and see how best they line up with your targets. You might be able to, dial in extra, elevation at the start, and then it helps all of your numbers line up as you go out in the field on your holdovers. So there's ways to play with these numbers and fudge them a little bit. In the game we play with the target sizes we're dealing with, unless we're talking about 1 MOA targets or smaller, you might need to be a little bit more precise, but usually you can give a tenth or two on some of your drop data on these targets. And so play around with those numbers a little bit with your holdovers and practice, adding some data, maybe taking some off so that your lines match up in your scope a little bit better. That'll help you be faster. You can see how holdovers save a lot of time. If I were to dial, if I were to basically come off the gun a little bit and dial each of those different yardages, we probably could have tacked on another 20 seconds or more onto the top of that stage simply because I had to stop and dial everything. So hopefully that benefited somebody today, guys. Again, kind of quick and simple video today, but thanks for watching. Tune in again soon for another great video from Precision Rifle Network.